With the Super Bowl coming up this weekend, there's no doubt that we're going to see plenty of beer commercials. In honor of those upcoming commercials, we're going to take a look at how beer commercials have evolved here in the United States since the advent of television, and we'll look to the changes being made to beer commercials today, and hopefully we'll learn some things to watch out for this weekend. Hello beer nerds, this is Beer by the Numbers. Beer commercials dominate television ad space, especially during sporting events, but this was not always the case. In honor of the biggest sporting event here in the US right around the corner, today we'll be looking at a history and evolution of beer commercials. Let's get started. When television sales began to explode following World War II in the 1940s, no one really knew how to advertise beer. Early commercials ranged from live demos showing how to cook with beer to commercials like this with people singing a brewer's theme song.
My beer is Rheingold, the dry beer. East side, west side, and up, down, and down. Rheingold extra dry beer is the beer of great renown. Friendly, freshening Rheingold, always happily dry. The clean, clear taste you want in beer is in Rheingold extra dry.
However, Prohibition's still fresh in people's minds. Brewers were wary to press their luck advertising aggressively to avoid being labeled as a moral nuisance. After all, many conservative people saw the television as an intrusion into the home, and featuring a vice like beer on a commercial may draw flack for an aspiring brewer. There was one thing that did save beer advertising on television: TV's instant popularity in bars and taverns. For instance, half of all television sets sold in Chicago in 1947 were in bars and taverns, and every bar and tavern had practically no choice but to get a TV after the 1947 World Series telecast drew huge crowds to bars around the country. This provided a great opportunity to advertise during sports programs to reach drinkers right there in the bar, where they could order the beer they saw flash across the screen immediately. And from that point on, sports and beer commercials were inexorably linked and led to the old marketing adage, "Sports sells beer," which back then was almost as common of a phrase as "sex sells." In 1951, Blatz Beer was the sole sponsor of what was perhaps television's first major media event, the migration of the venerable Amos and Andy radio program to television. Blatz officials traveled the country in an airplane with a fully equipped public relations office, stirring up excitement for the new program. Spending $250,000 just to hype the premiere episode, Blatz quickly ranked amongst television's top advertisers. Other brewers would soon follow. Of course, sponsoring the highly rated programs was key, but as viewers became more sophisticated, the commercials also needed to be more polished. After all, if the ad didn't sell the product, it was useless. Several genres of TV commercial emerged: the testimonial, the mini-drama, the celebrity endorsement, and the demonstration. But the cornerstone of the American TV advertising was, and largely still is, what experts call the identifiable character. Tony the Tiger, the Jolly Green Giant, and countless others. Among the earliest and certainly most successful ID characters put to work on television for a brewery was Mabel, the genial blonde bartendress who ended virtually every commercial with a friendly wink. Beginning in 1951 and for nearly the next 20 years, Mabel and her tray of Carling Black Label beers glided across millions of television screens in response to that familiar call. Hey Mabel, Black Label. During much of the 50s and 60s, advertising agencies that handled beer accounts were saddled with a unique dilemma. The average beer drinker, Joe Sixpack by beer marketers, perceived little difference between one domestic brand of beer and another. In the consumer's mind, all beer was made from essentially the same ingredients, underwent the same brewing process, and came in basically the same type of packages, and cost more or less the same. For ad agencies and copywriters, this made it relatively few selling points. A beer's flavor, more often than not, was the only source of distinction. Thus, flavor became the underlying theme, in one form or another, of virtually all beer commercials. However, 3 days in 1971 changed all that. Beer distributors from around the country converged on Boca Raton for Miller Brewing Company's annual sales meeting. The focal point of the gathering was Miller's launch of a nationwide advertising campaign centered around the slogan, "If you've got the time, we've got the beer." A new genre of beer commercial was about to be born. For the first time, beer ads were not about the beer, but rather about the beer drinker. Joe Sixpack ate it up, and beer advertising moved headlong into a new era. Television was perhaps never more instrumental in the launch of a new brand of beer than it was for Miller Lite. Introducing a low-calorie beer, after all, was no small gamble for Miller. Naysayers argued that men, who naturally comprised the bulk of the beer-consuming public, would likely regard Light as a sissy beer. This was the challenge faced by McCann Erickson, Miller's ad agency. The solution? Find the toughest, manliest guys out there and put them on TV touting the merits of light beer from Miller. The first Light commercials aired in 1973 and starred the likes of football greats Matt Snell and Ernie Stautner. Over the course of the next decade, the company shot more than 80 commercials, and the roster of Light All-Stars boasted nearly 40 celebs and sports icons. John Madden, Rodney Dangerfield, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Dick Butkus, and Bob Uecker were just a few of the Light regulars. For the next 20 to 30 years, beer commercials didn't undergo any major changes. Until 1999, Budweiser propelled beer advertising into a comedy age with their famous What's Up campaign.
Hello? What's that? What's up? Yo, where's Dookie? Yo, Dookie!
Yo.
What's up?
What's that?
This spurred a generation of commercials that were meant to entertain as much as showcasing a product. These commercials found renewed relevance in the emergence of the internet as early viral videos. Today we're seeing beer commercials take another turn, commercials focusing on the quality of the ingredients and the brewing process, as well as showing a hip, younger persona, are starting to appear across the industry, as many drinkers develop more sophisticated tastes during America's craft beer revolution. Here's an example of what I mean.
What makes the craft beer powerful? Is it the brewer who took the risk to create something unique? Or is it the hours of back-breaking labor that went into production? Some would say it's both.
So keep an eye out this weekend for any of these classic themes in beer commercials. From comedy to emphasizing process to catchy jingles, beer commercials come in many varieties. See what you can spot as you pound a few cold ones during the Super Bowl. If you enjoyed this video, share it with a drinker you love. You'll both be smarter drinkers because of it. And if you want to be alerted each time we tap a fresh episode of Beer by the Numbers, hit that subscribe button. Stay curious, beer nerds, and as the old adage goes, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy beer, and that's kinda the same thing.